This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to an episode of the podcast that is recorded in person. Oh my God, for the first time in, I believe now, 15 months. The last episode I recorded in person was Jason Corbin. I've been doing these remotely, and I'm a little nervous about it. I don't know why. It's like a little weird sensation to be in the same room. I think that I got used to doing it remotely, and it was really awkward at first, but now being back in the same room is kind of equally, in a new way, kind of fresh and awkward. But Sean Curran's in town from Austin, and turns out he works right down the street from my old buddy John Trayer at Greatest Common Factory. John, I got to get you on this podcast at some point. I miss you, buddy. That was my old partner. He's got his own agency in Austin. So let's get straight to this conversation. We are in the library at the Creative Circuits where we've been kind of kicked out of for a year. We are back. Sean is at Ranch Rider Spirits. That's in Austin. And he's had a really interesting sort of career arc, starting off in agencies. I'm going to read the bio that we had for the forum today. So he's based in Austin, Texas. He's a deep-seated experience on the agency side, spent time as an art director and creative director, Victors and Spoils, Night After Night, Movement Strategy, Crisp and Porter Bogusky, Bakery, Fact and Fiction, and Fortnite Collective. Currently, he's award-winning Vice President of Creative and Marketing, best known for his work with Kings of Leon, Jameson Whiskey, and most recently, Ranch Rider Spirits, the fastest-growing startup in alcohol. He is actually in-house as what's your title there?
Vice President of Creative and Marketing.
Did I just say that? I just said that.
I think so.
Award-winning Vice President of Creative and Marketing. So he made the leap to brand side after meeting the co-founders of Ranch Rider, who were in need of someone to build and run marketing for their, at the time, 3-month-old startup. Together, they have taken Ranch Rider to the top, being named Drizzly's number 2 best-selling canned cocktail nationwide and Nielsen's number 1 fastest-selling canned cocktail nationwide. What's Drizzly?
Drizzly is like a delivery service for alcohol. It's like a third-party delivery service.
That's
for
right.
alcohol.
I knew that and forgot. I'm thinking, is Drizzly like a trade publication? No, I remember that now. And he's generous enough to have come to Atlanta today to talk to the students. And I want to leverage a little bit off of what he talked about to the students, and I have some other questions. But first off, thank you so much for spending the day with us and for coming in and talking to us and talking to me and talking to the listeners of the podcast.
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you for having me. And it's the first podcast I've ever recorded. So
really?
I think that's awesome.
That's kind of cool.
And I finally crawled out of my cave to come down and do this.
Right. Well, so real quick, you guys in the office?
Yeah, we're back in the office.
How long have you been back in the office? You're in Texas. Well, you've been there the whole time, right?
Yeah.
We
didn't have an office actually for the first 6-8 months of business. I think we finally signed the lease on our office about November. Started moving in. Well, we were working out of there with zero furniture for the first 2-3 months, and then started moving in there early this year. So ever since November, back in the office.
So talk to me about the feeling of being in a startup and what's the same and what's radically different and sort of maybe unsettling compared to sort of your days on the agency side. Like what does it feel like being in a place? Because there's a couple things I want to talk about. One is like just sort of the challenges and problems of being in-house and how that's different for a creative, but even fundamentally just part of being something that's from the beginning. Like what does it feel like? And how does it remind you of other things or does it not?
It's a great question, and I think that there's a lot of parallels to being at a startup business and at a small agency. Most of my experience is small agencies, and the parallels that I draw, I think, come down to like culturally, just everybody having access to one another. Finance having access to marketing, and marketing having access to production. Same as a small agency where your junior creatives have access to your CCO down the hall. And I think that that's one of the most beneficial things to being in a small company versus a conglomerate agency that's got holding companies and massive clients. I think that the experience that comes along with just being able to access all of the different facets around you rather than just a direct report teaches you so much about anything other than your craft or your lane or your specific task and job at hand.
Does that motivate you? Does that make the job more fun for you personally?
Personally, yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe the same is true for a lot of people, but I think that having access to that type of perspective and knowledge outside of your domain and your realm definitely comes down to like not necessarily motivation, but just perspective to do your job in a more effective way. So being able to see, you know, what finance is struggling with, or what finances and how they're looking at budgets, allows me to understand how to better spend money.
Were you curious about that stuff early? I mean, was that something that you? What was the intro to Kimmy Schmidt? This is going to be a fascinating transition.
Oh, yeah.
What was the transition of like kind of like I guess kind of narrow lane, but you're a craftsperson, right? You're an idea person, an art director, and you have your role. Did you sort of internally at some point say like, you know, I want to expand, or is this expansion just kind of showing up and you're grabbing it? You know what I mean? Does that make sense, the question?
It does, yeah. I think that I have, since I was a kid, have had a really hard time staying in my lane or staying within the confines of what I'm, you know, quote unquote allowed to do, or expected to do. I think even as an intern or some of my earliest jobs, I think I frustrated a lot of people, and I think that I challenged a lot of people because I saw things or thought about things in ways that were outside of just especially as an art director, art swatches and style guides and mood boards and campaign aesthetics. I always thought outside of that, because to me that's what helped informed my job better and was allowing me to do more effective things within that job. So I've always been outside of that, and I think that's been a difficult thing probably for the people around me, because I'm nosy and I ask questions and I challenge the way other people are doing things for the sake of hopefully providing to them a better version of what I can create.
Did you know that there was a value to that early, or did you question whether, you know what I'm saying? Like, did you struggle with the fact that like you're bringing things no one wants and that's their problem, therefore it's your problem? Or did you always know that like, no, this just isn't the right spot for me or whatever?
I think that I always knew that I wasn't doing the right thing for myself because I was always stepping outside of my lane. I think that I constantly recognized that the ways that I was thinking about things or the way I was approaching things that were outside of that lane weren't because I was thinking bigger. It was because I wasn't actually that good at my job. I don't think that I was ever a good art director. I'm a terrible designer.
Interesting.
But I think that I always brought good creative thinking and got by with the design and the art direction I'd bring to the table. But I think I was a good thinker because of the things I was able to piece together, and I think that that's kind of like what has helped propel me. And I think that's why I'm pretty good at the job that I have now, because it's less hands-on and it's more led by thought, thinking, and direction.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what's your job?
Oh man, it's a lot of budget audits. It's a lot of yeah. I spend a lot of time in spreadsheets.
The first thing I thought when I met you was like, God, this guy looks like an accountant. He's probably really happy to. No, I'm kidding, people. This is a guy with a Goodyear cap on, and it's kind of casually dressed with some really beautiful ink on one hand and some other ink on the other hand,
and some suede cowboy boots.
I'm sorry, yeah, and some suede. So yeah, no. So I'm obviously being facetious. So are you comfortable in that? Is that because you see the picture, right?
Yes.
Because you see how it fits into the bigger story.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable and confident in this role than I ever did as like a creative director or an art director, because I'm able to like look at data. I'm able to look at budget forecasts, spend forecasts, and see like, okay, this is where we need to see our velocity of sales increase, and this is where we need to see more people just flooding to stores to buy our product. Go to our store locator and find Ranch Rider Spirits. Got to plug it.
Go to store lit.
Yeah.
Just go right now to the store locator and find Ranch Rider Spirits. Search for a store near you.
Yeah. But no, I think I'm able to see like what needs to happen and create the opportunities for the people around me to do their thing. I think that I've had a brand, head of experiences, killer creative agency, really strong media agency, and my job is ultimately to like find the opportunities for them to succeed and do their best work.
That's cool. All right, so shifting gears a little bit. So we were talking before Forum, and you'd mentioned that you didn't go to college, and you've built this career. So one of this topic keeps coming up a lot on this podcast, and that is the whole notion of an imposter syndrome, right? Did you suffer kind of like, what am I doing here? I haven't earned this. I don't deserve this. And was that related to just sort of your innate youth in the industry, or was there some of that remnant of like, all these college grads are smarter than I am? Talk a little bit about that and whether you had, you're nodding, whether you had that and how you overcame it.
It's funny you bring that up, because I was talking with my girlfriend before this, and I was like, man, imposter syndrome is so real, and I feel it right now. I don't have a college degree. I am young, and I constantly feel like I'm not qualified, or I'm not equipped enough to do the job at hand, or to talk to people and give them insights like I just did in front of students, you know. Mm-hmm. But I've always kind of felt an element of imposter syndrome. I think a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. And I think it's okay to feel imposter syndrome. I think that the best thing you can do to combat that is just allow yourself to feel it. And I think the same thing goes, and I think that this is rampant within creatives, but like anxiety and doubt and insecurity and imposter syndrome. I think I bottle all of those together, and I think everybody as a creative feels those things. And I think that the best possible thing that you can do to help yourself through that is accept it, all of it, and just know that it's okay to feel all of those things, because everybody next to you is also feeling them. But if you can allow yourself to know that it's okay to feel them, that's literally all you can do.
But two parts of that were really huge. The part about other people are feeling it too not only loosens the pressure on you feeling like something's wrong with you, but also creates sort of a sense of grace around you and acceptance of people's sort of shortcomings, and goes back to it's connected to this whole clients not your enemies part of it, but it's also this famous one of my favorite old Chinese proverbs is like, approach everyone with kindness, for everyone's carrying pain, right? Everyone has something that they're dealing with. The part I want to get to the client part in a minute, but the other thing I wanted to mention that you said that was really cool, and I don't know if you want to expand on it or not, but like you said that your first agency experience was in an environment that was a bad match for you. It was like a pharma place with people with career creatives that were in another generation, and you didn't feel in place. What I thought was so cool, what you said, was that you said that there must be a better version of this, mm-hmm. right? Talk a little bit about how you can identify something at the wrong place and use that as sort of like informing your next move or whatever.
I think you just feel it and you can't overthink it. And I think that a lot of us as creatives get caught up overthinking everything. And I think back to that internship in New Jersey and not loving it and not feeling comfortable and not feeling rewarded, but knowing like there's no way I should feel rewarded as an intern at this place. But I didn't overthink it, and I just said, like, this feels cool. There's something here, and I just kind of followed that gut feeling. And I think that a lot of the moves, both physically and just career moves or, like, physically moving.
Or geographic moves, yeah.
Yeah, have been based on gut feeling.
Interesting.
And just trusting that, this feels right, and there's something else out there that I am sensing, am hoping for. And if I take this risk or if I take this move and I trust my gut, it'll come to fruition and it'll see itself through.
Yeah, that's cool. So you talked a little bit about not identifying as being a great designer or art director. So what have you taken from your sort of first phase of your career as an agency creative art director and creative director? What did you take? What was the education there that led you to where you are now, and what sort of why did you take this leap to basically leave an agency to start to roll up your sleeves, literally roll up your sleeves and help build a startup brand? What was the exciting part of that for you?
It's a great question. I was working at an agency at the time that I wasn't loving. Just culturally not a good fit. Leadership was a little bit interesting in not something that I vibed with, not in a way that I would lead a group of people or a group of creatives. So I was just ultimately in a place where I was looking for an opportunity to continue to grow. And I've moved around a lot. I've never spent more than 2-3 years at an agency, and some people look at that as a bad thing, but I've always just said, like, okay, I've learned a lot from this experience, and I think that I can take this elsewhere and continue to grow. So I got to this point there where I realized that I kind of had hit that point of I need to take my experience of what I've learned here and move on. And the timing of meeting Brian and Quentin was just absolutely incredible.
That's cool.
And I think that, again, it was a feeling of they've got something going on that I totally understand how to do.
Cool.
And they need this role. They need this person to help them, because they knew what they were doing. They totally did, and they could have done just as well, but I think that they needed to pass it off to someone who had more experience on the creative side rather than the business side. They just finished up, their master's programs, were looking to build a business, and it allowed them to succeed and still succeed at being the business leaders of the organization.
That's really cool. Listeners, I apologize if you're hearing noise. We are back in the building, and someone just dragged some furniture or whatever. And I don't even know I don't even know if Sean heard it, but like I can hear it. It's picking up on the microphone. So you talked a little bit about this sort of the data and number stuff, but like I'm curious about you, the way your brain works, right? As a creative person, like what prepared you, or was it innate for you to think sort of tactically and to see sort of was the career in an agency and your relationship with agency clients something that illuminated you about how creative is part of a bigger picture, or are you basically a tactical thinker in general and you found a way to plug it in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that I've always the whole like left brain, right brain conversation. I am true a very logical type A thinker. I think a lot of creatives aren't that type A. I think that in that being logical, being a type A thinker, I think that I look for solutions to problems. And I think with that, I bring the ability to think creatively to a logical problem-solving first train of thought, which kind of limits me in a sense. It doesn't allow me to be the most innovative always, but it allows me to problem solve better than most. And it's a tough thing because I think that I've come to points in my career as a creative director where I'm not necessarily the best person to reinvent the entire world to break open a new opportunity, but I think that I'm a very tactical and logical thinker with a creative problem-solving mind.
Almost like a project management sort of mentality.
More or less, yeah.
And to me, I think the biggest challenge, and this is a total personal tangent, is like identifying the right problem sometimes.
Yes.
I mean, I think sometimes like
knowing where to dive super deep into something and where to just kind of like just keep things moving,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but for me, it's sort of like, okay, if we nail any one of these things, what's the one that's going to have the biggest impact, right?
Yeah.
What's the problem that is the most valuable problem to solve for, this small part of the business or this big, huger part of the business? And to me, I think that there's sort of an art, and a lot of that, I think I'm looking at you thinking that a lot of that's sort of a gut feeling, but it's also understanding the entire category, the entire environment, culture, all those kind of things. So I don't know. I'm just talking.
No, it's a good point. And I think I was getting into the whole like sales marketing relationship earlier too, and I think that it absolutely relates to that. Whereas with the sales-led organization and a massive sales team that is tasked with growing the business just by sheer volume and new accounts, their problems that they identify as needing the most attention aren't actually the problems that are going to take us the furthest.
Right.
And I think that in that sense, you're identifying the problems that are right there in front of you, to which I think that in this same sense of allowing my team to run with things and not getting in their way and allowing them to be the best versions of themselves, I am in this special spot between sales and the creative marketing team that I've built and the agencies we work with, in being able to identify, okay, what are these issues that sales is having, and what are the issues that we as an organization are having in breaking through to exponential growth, and what is our team as a creative unit able to solve for them that maybe the sales team isn't necessarily seeing.
Right. Sometimes the sales team's problems are symptoms of a problem.
Yes, right. To which we're able to say, okay, here's the actual opportunity. Yeah. Let me go work on this thing while we give you what you need, and then we're going to move way, way, way further.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So in the presentation earlier to the students, you had mentioned the first lesson, sort of important thing to point you want to make is that the client is not your enemy. There's a lot of, I think that we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast, that like a relationship with the client is critical, that clients are trying as hard as you are to try to solve problems, and they're not trying to sabotage the process, all of these kind of truths. My question for you about that, and I'm happy for you to elaborate on just the notion, but my question for you is like, when and how did you come to the realization that, oh wow, you know what? They're not just trying to screw us over. They actually know something we don't and have a problem that we don't know or whatever about. So how did that, when in your career, or was there a moment you can recall where it's like that sort of shifted in your mind?
The day I started at Ranch Rider. Yeah, it wasn't until I joined the brand side that I recognized, like, wow, this is not what I thought it was. And I think even at the agency I was at most recently prior to Ranch Rider, it was, we have clients you work with that you think, man, these people just have no idea what they're doing, and they lead us down one path and then they take us down another. And you think that when they brief you, until the time that you deliver the work, nothing changes for them. And that when they briefed you, they gave you everything that they knew and nothing changes, and they're just waiting. Every day, every minute that goes by, something is changing on their side until you deliver the work. And that's,
right. The reality is that shit is changing.
All the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's something like we used to spend, there was a project we were working on for Diageo, and I remember we spent so much time just perfecting this deck and how it was laid out and the flow of this deck. If we would have gotten the work to them a week earlier, instead of spending all this time perfecting the deck, probably would have been better received because it would have been closer to the original brief than the extra week of time that things changed.
Bringing them in earlier. And that's what I also loved. You said that the creative team that works for you, with you, is like you're constantly in touch with on Slack. So it's more of a flow and a give and take. I wonder if that's more common. Have you found that to be more common now? Is that because you're a startup, or is that because this is 2021 and this is how agency client relationships work? What do you think?
I think it's both, and it's a great question. I think that Slack, we go back and forth with our sales team about Slack all the time because we've got a little bit of an older sales team, and sales as an organization just lives on email because their distributors are email or whatever. Whereas marketing usually tends to skew a little bit younger and a little bit more tech savvy. Like, Slack is an amazing, amazing tool, but can also get in the way sometimes where you're just like too in the moment. But I think that part of this is about us being a startup and being able to be very close, from myself down to our creatives at the agency, all together on Slack with our media agency, with our vendors and production partners. But at the same time, I think that where we're heading is even the largest of agencies, even the largest of corporations are going to be able to get to a place where you will exist on Slack with your clients if they're not already. I'm not there. They may be doing that, right? But I don't know. It hasn't been that long that Slack has like been a true tool. I remember using Slack, I guess, 2015 maybe was the first time I think I used Slack, and it was just internal, and it was just kind of between the teams, and it is really phenomenal to see the collaboration and the speed and the elevated communication that comes out of being tied in directly with everybody that you're working with on a thing. There's no disconnect.
Yeah, that's really cool. How's the work-life balance?
It's a good question.
Your face was like, I'm not sure I want to answer that one. You asked the question, and I'm going to figure out an answer now. Good question.
No, it's honestly, it's much, much better than it was on the agency side. I don't work crazy late hours anymore. I mean, agency side, I was late hours. You have 2 a.m. nights. That's not a rare occurrence at any agency of any size, and being back in the office at 9 a.m. after a 2 a.m. night is a very real thing at agencies. Yeah. I'd say at Ranch Rider, I work into the night sometimes, but it's never stuck at the office till 2 a.m. It's an email out to dinner, maybe at 8 a.m. at 8 p.m. or something like that. But I leave the office around 5 o'clock most days. I'm coming in, starting my day around 8 or 9 at home. Make my way to the office around 10. It's a good work-life balance, but we're a startup, year and a half into doing business, trying to open up a bunch of markets. So at the same time, I've been traveling for the last 6-8 weekends.
Yeah, wow. God. All right, so what is it about you? What personal trait of yours? What is it about Sean Curran you think that's served you well so far in your career?
I think it's a trait that has served me well, but has also been very limiting. And I think that it's like how assertive I am with my vision and my ideas. And I think that when I was an art director and had 5-6 people above me, that didn't work out so well. Because
I know what you're talking about. I've had professional relationships with people who seem to be overstepping, and I don't even really want to get into too much specifics because they may know who I'm talking about. But like the idea that like you're going to come in and like change things, it's almost like I talk about this with students here as students. Like when you have an idea on your own and you're going to meet with your partner, there's an art to working that idea into the conversation so they feel they're
Absolutely.
on board with you versus kind of railing it
Yep.
right off the bat. I got this idea. It's like, well, that's your idea. And like, I would, give me a minute to kind of get my head around it. And I think there's an art to that. And it also takes a certain, someone has to know you and say, okay, this
Yep.
guy is like, we only need a 1 pound of soil. He's got a truck full of soil. That's a great thing, right? So you're in an environment now where like it's valued, right?
Absolutely. I'm now in an environment where it works because it takes that level of assertiveness and confidence in a vision to rally a bunch of people
Absolutely
behind it.
Right.
To where you're saying, as an art director copywriter relationship, that does not work, and you're always the bad guy in the situation.
Right.
You are looked at as the jerk.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's my, I think, strongest personality trait that has taken me this far, though, because okay, maybe I've pissed off a few people along the way doing it, but
you were a leader that didn't have a leadership role.
Right.
Right.
No, absolutely, and it maybe it sounds like conceited.
It sounds
way,
conceited, but it's not conceited because that's your trait.
Right.
So this is the way you see things, and like it has to find it's bouncing around till it settles. And I think that's one thing that people don't understand about just the career arc in general is that shit bounces around till it settles. And I'm not saying settles. I'm saying finds its slot or whatever.
And then maybe it bounces around again, but it finds its comfortable slot for a time being.
It found the right slot. I don't even think comfortable is a good word either.
Yeah.
But yes, I understand what you're saying. So knowing what you know now, if you could go back and whisper something in young Sean's ear when you started out at the first internship, like what do you wish you had known? Because I think the client is not your enemy is one I would love to have known. But what's something you wish you had known?
It's a great question, and there's so many things. I'm trying to think.
I think
of
the answer changes too.
Yeah, the answer definitely changes depending upon the day, the hour, how many drinks I've had. But
I wish I had known not to have that last drink.
Yeah, no, I think I would say that the level of perfection that is strived for at an agency is not anywhere as near important as it needs to be. Like, you can take a half-baked idea to a client. You can take a deck that has kerning issues to a client. It's okay. You can take a script that doesn't have the most perfect imagery in its mood boards to a client. It's okay. And I know that that's controversial to a lot of creatives, art directors, designers, writers out there. It absolutely is, because how do you get them to see it? Or how do you get them to, really see the power of the idea and how big it can be? They see it. They know. You could talk to them, and you could write your idea down on a napkin, and you could have a conversation with them just as easily as you can put together a massive deck and perfect everything that goes into the sale. I mean, I wish I could show y'all some of the decks that we use to present and sell our brand now. It is heinous. They're heinous. They're PowerPoint presentations that sales teams copy and paste slides from different things, but it works because the brand has a strong story, the product has a strong sales
packaging
story.
Is beautiful,
right? And like, sometimes things speak for themselves, and I think like the pressure that is relieved in that setting is so helpful, because it allows you to not worry about the perfection and what someone's going to think of. Oh shit, I didn't kern that properly, and they're going to think less of me or whatever.
It comes back to like what we were talking about earlier about the problem you're solving. But by making it perfect, you're solving the problem. It really isn't the problem. The problem is to get your client on board to understand, and is that really going to solve the problem? And understanding what the client's problems are. The time spent perfecting a deck isn't necessarily working towards either of those goals.
Right.
It could be.
Yeah.
It's probably
perfect
not.
it once you've sold it in, and it's going to print with your cardboard supplier that's going to be making all the assets that go along with this thing. Or perfect it once you get in the room with the production company who does value, the script and the boards and the vision.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks so much for talking, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
How can listeners find you or find your company online? Like, I meant to ask you for all that stuff at the beginning and completely forgot.
No, absolutely.
I botched the intro too, but you know what? Fuck it. I don't care anymore.
Absolutely. You can find us at Ranch Rider Spirits on Instagram, and you can find us online at ranchriderspirits.com/find us. There's about 12 different markets we're in. Mm-hmm. Liquor stores and bars across basically the Sun Belt of the United States. And next month, we're going to be launching direct-to-consumer shipping from our website, ranchriderspirits.com. which 38 states will be able to order Ranch Rider on.
That's really cool. And find you on LinkedIn. Is that the best way? If someone has a question wants to ask you personally?
Yep, yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, just Sean Curran, look up Ranch Rider Spirits, you'll be able to find me pretty easy.
Awesome. And listeners, you can find me, you can send me an electronic mail, or you can find me on Slack. I don't know exactly which channel you'll be on to find me on Slack, but email me at danspodcast@mac.com. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Dan. Thanks again for having me.
Listeners, thanks for paying attention. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Have a great one. See you. Bye.